I'm Caroline Hyde. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, the WikiLeaks data trove. The organization releases thousands of documents, purportedly from the cyber espionage playbook of the CIA. Plus, Snap fizzles as shares take a beating for a second consecutive day. We'll look into the reasons behind the short IPO honeymoon. And Jeff Bezos' space colonization dream gets its first paying customer. But first, to our lead. WikiLeaks has published thousands of documents reportedly taken from the CIA and exposed a massive toolkit of cyber spying techniques. Among the disclosures, the CIA hackers have the ability to access information from what were believed to be secure messaging apps, including WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal. They can also reportedly run malware on Microsoft Windows and can tap into Samsung smart TVs for surveillance. Now, we don't know how WikiLeaks got its hands on the material, and a CIA spokesman said the agency does not comment on the authenticity of the documents. Very pleased to say, joining us now to discuss the impact of this massive data dump, security advisor Brian White, COO of Red Owl. He's previously worked with Homeland Security and Booz Allen Hamilton. Also with us, Alex Rice, CTO of HackerOne and former Facebook head of product security. Gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today. And first of all, Brian, get your take. Just how sophisticated is this? Because there's much reports that actually they're getting behind the encryption. Are they really?
Yeah, I think we are uncertain about what indeed they have right now. What it appears is that they have information from the CIA on their hacking techniques and what they're doing to take advantage to exploit various devices and various programs. What I think is also going to be interesting is to find out how indeed they found this information, because it seems to be that they have somebody on the inside. And this will be yet again a major breach by an insider of the United States intelligence community. And I think that's just as troubling as these leaks themselves, because how can we really ensure that our most secret information is indeed held in secure in the way that we need and we trust it?
Suddenly it begs the question, Alex, whether classified information is going to remain classified here on out.
I think we've demonstrated time and time again that secrets don't remain secret for long. And there are far too many secrets here, secrets that impact U.S. civilians on a pretty regular basis. I have a Samsung TV sitting in my bedroom. My daughter has one in her room. And it really raises the question that, backing up a bit, the U.S. government today has a policy on disclosing vulnerabilities as a means of course, except for when they're needed in rare instances of national security. And this seems to have been not honoring that agreement, this hoarding of vulnerabilities that impact criminals in some cases, but far more law-abiding citizens than not. And when those vulnerabilities aren't disclosed or brought to the public, they put us all at risk.
And so, the possibility, the realms of possibility, had you always assumed, Brian, that this was possible by the CIA, that they were able to get through the encryption and we just weren't being told about it?
I think that we should all believe that they are trying their best to defeat our most advanced technical means, because it's in our interest. In fact, as a U.S. citizen, while at one hand this may scare you, on the other hand, you may also want your intelligence community to have the capabilities to indeed find out information that may be in the hand of an adversary. And so, in one sense, you applaud their ingenuity. On the other hand, however, I think you need to be more and more concerned about how far this keeps going. And I think this is yet another rift in the Silicon Valley, Washington, Silicon Valley intelligence community divide. Because what it seems to be is that they are indeed targeting now more and more devices that are connected. And indeed, they are also targeting these applications that are built on the fundamental premise of encryption.
Alex, you've got a bug bounty platform. That's what HackerOne is. It's connecting the community with sort of ethical hackers to strain some of the underlying technology that they offer. Are companies like Facebook, where you used to work, which owns WhatsApp and the like, actually pouring enough in terms of their own R&D to ensure that they're able to combat the learnings of the CIA in this respect?
Yeah. Something that everyone who uses our platform and engages with the hacker community realizes is that, of course, there is vulnerabilities in technology. That's not the surprising news today. The surprising news today is that there are vulnerabilities identified that haven't been immediately reported and remediated so that we're all protected. Many organizations take those steps to try to identify as many as possible, but nobody believes that they have found them all, or that they're the only ones who have found them, which to me is the most egregious part of this whole experience. It takes a certain amount of arrogance to believe that once you've found a vulnerability that you are the only one who has found that vulnerability, or the only one capable of identifying that vulnerability.
I think what's really notable about this particular revelation from WikiLeaks is the documents show the tools are being used 2013 to 2016. This is really recent.
Yes.
Brian, and the vulnerabilities therefore likely to still be there, or will the likes of the ethical hackers shown that Samsung TVs perhaps could get a little bit safer, and WhatsApp does need to ensure that its phones can sometimes be broken into and then hacked pre-encryption?
Yeah, I think, well, yes, I think many of those are probably still there. I think as we speak, people are trying to go through the information and see what was disclosed and what they may not know. And there is work being done to ensure that those holes are being patched very rapidly. But I think the other interesting angle that we should talk about is the continuum of what this leak means. I mean, what we're seeking is, it's no longer leaking information to an enterprising reporter. It is giving, troves of documents to somebody to then publish widely. And that really starts to call into question how we're going to actually have an intelligence community. And the question for the hacker community is this the behavior that they're encouraging, which is to go ahead and take as much information available and disclose that, rather than just disclose one important issue?
What does your hacker community think, Alex? Because WikiLeaks has been around for several years, and whether you like it or loathe it, these sorts of pieces of information do get into the public domain, and they feel it's for force for good in many ways. What do the hacker community believe? Do they believe that this is the way to go about
the
spreading
disclosure guidelines on HackerOne are very explicit. If you're in possession of a vulnerability, the very first step you should take is get it into the hands of the vendor or the manufacturer who's capable of fixing and eliminating that vulnerability. I would encourage the CIA and the US government to do the same as frequently as possible. And now it's clear that this information has leaked and is in the hands of other people. Like, at least WikiLeaks at this point very probably has access to these vulnerabilities or these cyber weapons, and I would encourage them to follow the same practices of immediately disclosing those vulnerabilities so that we can be protected from them.
Tough question, Brian, but could this actually compromise CIA operatives at the moment, given that some of the data was so recent?
Very well, maybe. I mean, this is why I think these issues, frankly, cannot be magnified enough. The damage that is happening to the community, Snowden, there were a few major leaks at the NSA last year, now this at the CIA. This is a steady drumbeat of issues over and over and over again that is putting both sources and methods at legitimate risk.
Is it steady, or could it be getting faster and faster as we have an NSA that, for all intents and purposes, doesn't particularly get on that well with the current president-in-chief?
I think two things. One is, I think it is happening faster, but I think it's also a workforce culture issue, which is what you're happening is this idea of more and more embracing transparency. If people believe that behavior is unethical, they now have a whole new norm of how to go ahead and share information. Remember, it wasn't that long ago where if you stole information, you would hand it to one reporter, or you'd hand it to a few. You wouldn't just post it online. And that's changed the kind of the calculus, and also there's an ability to enrich yourself. Some people are selling this information and selling access. So in many ways, every employee of an organization, whether that's a private sector corporation or that's somebody in the United States intelligence community, has access to sensitive information now. And so I think we need to ask ourselves what we're doing to actually, detect and deter that behavior through just better and better employee coaching and monitoring.
I wish we could do this for longer. Thank you very much indeed. Sadly, I think this might happen again, and you indeed might have to come and shine your expertise with us on Bloomberg Technology. Brian White of Red Owl and Alex Rice of HackerOne. Now, one stock we're watching, HP Enterprise. The company announced a $1 billion deal to buy Nimble Storage. HP offered $12.50 a share for Nimble, which is about a 45% premium on Monday's closing price. Now, CEO Meg Whitman has been spending more on acquisitions in an effort to return sales growth. The Nimble acquisition extends HPE's reach into flash storage, which uses memory chips that are much faster than traditional hard disk-based storage. And another stock you've got to keep your eye on, Snap. Shares fall for the second day in a row, down 21% for the week so far. Why investors are stepping back from the company. Coming up. And a reminder that all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out. It's at Bloomberg Tech TV. That's weekdays at 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. right here in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. story we're watching. China's second largest telecommunications gear maker, that's ZTE, will plead guilty and pay a fine for more than $1 billion for violating US laws, restricting the sale of American technology to Iran. That's the largest criminal fine for the Justice Department in an export control or sanctions case. Now, according to court documents, ZTE allegedly shipped $32 million worth of US items to Iran between 2010 and 2016. ZTE said in a statement that it takes responsibility for its mistakes. And a stock we're watching, Snap. It appears that some of the initial shine is wearing off. This despite the tech sector as a whole closing higher in Tuesday trading. Shares of Snap, on the other hand, dropping almost 11%, continuing Monday's plunge. This comes after a 50% surge in its first 2 days of trading last week, remember. So why have investors had potentially a change of heart towards Snap? Bloomberg intelligence analyst Jitendra Warrell joins us for more. And Jitendra, not only the change of heart from investors, but why the negativity coming from the analysts so far? There's only 7 on the analyst recommendations of Bloomberg, but not one is a buy.
Yeah, so the two key issues here are valuation and user growth. So if you look at the valuation, I mean, it's more than 24 times price to forward sales. It makes it one of the most expensive stocks in the US tech space today. And that in the backlight of increasing Instagram competition and the slowing user growth that we saw in 4Q, and worries that would that reverse anytime soon. So I think those are the two big reasons why you're seeing all the negativity.
Does this happen often? I was looking back at Twitter and it rallied 70% on its opening day and managed to continue to push up its overall valuation. Meanwhile, Facebook eroded a lot of its value post-IPO. There was a glitch from NASDAQ, but then it only sort of several months later started to rebound. Should we be more braced for euphoria let down after IPOs?
I think so. If you look at most of the tech IPOs over the last 10 years, really, when we looked at the price movements, in the first couple of months, the volatility is very high because it's dictated by the supply demand of stocks available, what the interest level is at, because they float a very small amount. And then just before the lockup period, you see the movement changing direction and things like that. So this is a very common thing that we have seen in many of these IPOs. We saw that with GoPro, stock had tripled in the first couple of months of trading, and then fell after that just before the lockup period was up. So the supply demand of stock, the free float, how much the short interest is, so all those things actually take over the dynamic of the trading strategies in the first couple of months.
So you mentioned the heady valuation. You also mentioned the daily active user base, 158 million. There was Aegis analysts today putting out a note saying that could be as slow as 3% in January and February, half the pace of Instagram. What does Snap need to pull out the bag if it's going to convince us of its valuation?
So what they need to do is next 2 quarters make sure that the trajectory of user growth and engagement is staying put in light of Instagram competition. If they can show that they can fight back, then you could see some change in sentiment. But if they do miss in the next 2 quarters and we see signs that the user growth is not going to pick up, then this is not going to be good for the company.
Interesting that you mentioned GoPro just before that. It was notable that all the time Snap was trying to make itself out to be a camera company, trying to stop us making association with Facebook and Twitter, and then you see GoPro today at a record low when it comes to its own share price. Can you give us a sense of what to look out for GoPro as well at the moment, because this is another key stock we've got to be watching?
Yeah, so essentially with GoPro, I mean, the market for their core camera seems to be saturating. I mean, we're not seeing a lot of growth there. If you look at the consensus expectations for this year, it's only 5% revenue growth. And competition is heating up in drones. They had the Karma supply chain issues and the recall and things like that before, which sort of hammered expectations early on. But now the competition is coming up, like when Xiaomi is getting into the market with drones, and pricing will fall. So the revenue side of the equation is actually worrisome based on what the end market dynamics are looking like in terms of competition.
Jitendra, always great to have you on. All the stocks we should be watching, most notably Snap of today. Thank you very much indeed. Jitendra Warrell, of course, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Analyst. Another stock we're watching, Pandora shares plunging 7% in Tuesday trading. This after Liberty Media CEO Greg Maffei said the stock is overvalued and that it's unlikely his company would be interested in buying it at the current price. Liberty owns SiriusXM and has discussed buying Pandora in the past, but Maffei says today that a deal between Liberty and Pandora would be more likely if the stock was closer to $10 a share. Pandora previously rejected an offer from Liberty for $15 a share. Coming up, well, Blue Origin's reusable rocket New Glenn is expected to debut before the end of the decade, and founder Jeff Bezos just expanded on his vision from Washington. This is Bloomberg.
My vision for Blue Origin, the long-term vision, is millions of people living and working in space. We need a spacefaring civilization for a whole bunch of reasons, and that's the vision.
Hyperloop One is making waves in Nevada. The company has revealed that the first images of the DevLoop. Now, this is the first full-scale test track for the Nevada desert. The goal is to get a test run in the first half of this year, using the DevLoop as a proof of concept to prepare for the construction of its first commercial installation. Hyperloop One will focus on ferrying goods and eventually hopes to transport passengers at high speeds. Meanwhile, Blue Origin has seen a lot of action this week. On Monday, Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos tweeted out pictures of the first of 7 engines for the giant reusable New Glenn rocket. One day later, Bezos is announcing the rocket's first paying customer. Blue Origin has signed satellite operator Eutelsat as its first client. This as the company prepares to launch more powerful rockets early in the next decade. Bezos announced the partnership at the Satellite 2017 conference in Washington and invited Eutelsat's CEO on stage.
A few months ago, we started approaching customers, and Eutelsat was very interested, and right away, and it's really a great partnership, as we're saying, because they've done so many new vehicles in the past, and so we couldn't hope for a better first partner because they're going to be able to help.
Joining us now from Washington is Bloomberg's Dana Hull, who was at the Satellite 2017 conference. Dana, great reporting. Can you tell us, a paying customer, just how important is this for the New Glenn?
It's a huge step for Blue Origin as a company. I mean, this is a space exploration company that has really lived on Jeff Bezos' dream, and now they actually have some revenue in the forms of a paying customer. And it's notable that this announcement was made at Satellite 2017. This is the satellite industry's premier networking and conference event. So, this is probably the first of what will likely be more paying clients in the future.
I believe Eutelsat's already been a customer potentially of SpaceX. How does SpaceX and Virgin Galactic compare to where Blue Origin is right now?
Right, so I think what we're seeing in the space industry as a whole is the continual development and improvement of new and more powerful rockets that are capable of launching satellites to geostationary orbit, which is, very far away. And so New Glenn is the rocket that Blue Origin is working on. They say that their launch contract with Eutelsat is for 2021, so it's still a couple of years out. But, New Glenn is going to be a very powerful rocket, on the scope of which we just haven't seen in this country for quite some time. And I think you're seeing Bezos kind of expand beyond space tourism to commercial paying customers.
I mean, quite phenomenal leaps being made. There's a great story out on the Bloomberg saying about taxpayers and potentially how much they might be on the hook the next time a space mission by SpaceX or indeed Orbital, ATK or private companies actually fail. Is this something that you think is becoming known by the general public, or is this something that private companies should be having to look to themselves?
Well, I think that, the launch industry as an industry is very familiar with mishaps. And whenever a rocket explodes on a launch pad or shortly after flight, it's a setback for the industry as a whole because images of burning rockets don't do anyone any good. I think the whole insurance question is a really interesting one. Oftentimes there's dual insurance or, the way that the insurance deals are structured tends to be different for each provider. But what you're going to see going forward is bigger, heavier, more powerful rockets capable of launching heavier and grander payloads. And, now if you're a satellite company, you have more options. You can go on SpaceX, you can go on Arianespace, eventually you'll be able to go on Blue Origin. And so as for the satellite industry, this is great for them because they have more options and there's more competition, which ultimately will lower the cost for everyone.
Great for satellite. What about great for the consumer who is desperate to get into space? Virgin Galactic ticket holders have been pushed back and pushed back. Do you have any time frames, particularly for what Blue Origin is promising?
Well, they're talking about taking tourists to the edge of space for a few minutes of weightlessness and then bringing them back. I don't know what the timeline for that is, but I think it's within the next couple of years. And of course, they've kind of leaned on what they've learned from the test flights of New Shepard to help develop New Glenn, which is the new rocket that they're talking about.
And Dana, just remind us of what Jeff Bezos' grand view here. We know that Elon Musk is a visionary who potentially looks at us living outside into space. What does Jeff Bezos hope to achieve?
I mean, they're similar guys in that they are both, tech billionaires who made their fortunes in the internet and then immediately plowed those fortunes into private space companies. Bezos started Blue Origin 15 years ago with the millions that he earned as Amazon CEO, and they were relatively quiet until recently. But his vision is similar in that he wants to have millions of people living and working in space.
Dana, it's been great having you on. Thank you very much indeed. Live from Washington for us, Bloomberg's Dana Hull, covering all things satellite. Now, still to come, GoPro shares edge up slight after hitting a record low Monday. But how can the company recover with analysts piling on fresh downgrades? And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, why don't you? You can now listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the US on Sirius XM. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with a check of First Word News. House Speaker Paul Ryan expects to have the necessary votes to pass a replacement of the Affordable Care Law. The Speaker held a press briefing with reporters a short time ago.
Obamacare is collapsing. Obamacare isn't staying. If we did nothing, the law would collapse and leave everybody without affordable health care.
Earlier at the White House, President Trump said the Affordable Care Law has to be repealed, and he said he supports passage of the GOP health care plan.
I'm proud to support the replacement plan released by the House of Representatives and encouraged by members of both parties. I think really that we're going to have something that's going to be much more understood and much more popular.
British Prime Minister Theresa May suffered a fresh blow to her plan to trigger the start of Brexit talks. Upper House lawmakers today demanded the power to reject the final deal she reaches with the European Union. The House of Lords voted 366 to 268 in favor of changing Prime Minister May's draft of the Brexit law. China is warning of a new arms race after the U.S. began deploying a new missile system in South Korea. The first element of the system, known as THAAD, arrived a day after North Korea test-fired 4 missiles into the waters off the Japanese coast. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. Tuesday here in New York, 6:30 Wednesday morning in Hong Kong. My colleague David Inglis is standing by with a look at the markets. David, good morning.
Hi, Mark. Looking at these early indicators here across the Asia Pacific, it's looking subdued. It's looking quiet. We will most likely see these major markets when they do open up a bit later on, opening up mixed. When you look at futures over in Sydney, moderate declines being signaled there. Japan might just be able to open slightly above. And I'm being generous here. I mean, we're talking maybe just about 10, 20 points on the Nikkei 225. There's nothing much to trade on early this Wednesday. We have some very important data, though, coming out throughout the session today at some point, and hopefully that will be a catalyst in just over 90 minutes, under 90 minutes, rather. Japan comes out with its fourth quarter GDP report, and we're hoping to see a pickup in growth there to 1.5%. And I guess amid all the acrimony or recent acrimony over global trade or the outlook of global trade, we get China's latest trade data for February, and we're expecting a pickup there in both exports and in imports as well, due out in just about 4 hours from now. I'm David Ingles in Hong Kong. More from Bloomberg Tech next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. Our top story this hour, a massive document dump by WikiLeaks with implications that could rock the tech industry. The controversial organization founded by Julian Assange posted more than 8,000 files Tuesday that it says came from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence. Now, the material reportedly discloses hacking tools, including malware and viruses that CIA hackers use for cyber espionage. It also reveals that the agency can break into devices and intercept messages before they can be encrypted by apps like WhatsApp, Signal and Telegram. A spokesman for the CIA said the agency does not comment on the authenticity or content of such documents. WikiLeaks says that this is just the first of a series of leaks to come. Now, GoPro shares closing at a record low Tuesday, despite the tech sector edging higher overall. Shares down over 2%. Earlier this week, Goldman Sachs lowered its rating for the company to a sell. This comes as GoPro hits a rough patch. The company reported disappointing earnings and forecast in February that remember, it also recalled its Karma drone in November, and in that same month cut 15% of its workforce. Joining us from New York is Bloomberg Technology reporter Selena Wang, who covers this company for us. And let us know what prompted, say, Goldman Sachs and also Citigroup just before it to start downgrading their overall viewpoint on this stock.
There was already significant bearish sentiment on this company. As you mentioned, there were several quarters of bad earnings. There was just one string of mishap after another. There's several execution issues in terms of production. The Hero 5 camera was delayed, which, by the way, was the first upgrade to their flagship product since 2014. The Karma was also rolled back, and then they had to cut a bunch of employees and get rid of their media entertainment unit. So these two companies, Citi and Goldman, these analysts, they are really just digesting this information, analyzing it, and putting some really strong rhetoric to it. We had Citigroup saying that GoPro is the best option in a deteriorating neighborhood, which is not promising. They're saying that GoPro may still be a market leader in this category, but this category overall is declining. So there's a lot of bearish sentiment that has been leading up to this.
I mean, just looking at the share price and indeed the market capitalization of GoPro, I'm in the Bloomberg, $1.12 billion. I mean, this is just a $1 billion company now. That is quite amazing to see how the deterioration has continued for this stock. And what now? How can they prove that they're turning this around? What could they possibly say to start getting the analysts on their side?
I think that picture of that stock price graph over the past year since it's IPO'd is really a stark contrast from their previous visions when they IPO'd. In their first S1 filing, they said that it was going to become this software hardware ecosystem with this entertainment unit. With the job cuts, we saw that, okay, we're paring down our vision. We're going to focus on what's profitable, and the hardware component is the main growth driver, not this media and entertainment unit. In order for them to potentially drive back growth, they need to execute extremely well on their next products. These analysts are expecting them to roll out a Hero 6, an upgrade to their flagship camera, an upgraded drone at some point that is a good competitor to the market leader, which is DJI, and hopefully also to execute more on their virtual reality options as well. They have a camera rig. They're hoping that they'll also improve upon that. But I think there's a lot of skepticism in the market that they can actually execute on all of these fronts, given all the challenges that they've had.
And indeed continue to cut their cost base. That seems to be what some analysts are calling for, feeling that the $500 million promise isn't quite enough. What about also, in general, the hardware space? This seems to be a tough area to be in.
Hardware is hard, and we keep on learning that over and over again. It is just really difficult. GoPro isn't the only company with this problem. We're seeing Fitbit really struggle with this. It's really difficult to be a hardware company, and you have to rely on fickle consumers and product upgrades. And if you don't continue churning out new and better and more products and expand your diversify revenue base, things will really go south, which is what we're seeing with GoPro. I mean, we even see with a behemoth like Apple that even they struggle to continue to deliver the growth that they need. So for a company like GoPro, it's no surprise that a company that started out with a camera strapped on your head is now experiencing a lot of troubles a few years after its IPO.
Fascinating coverage. I know you'll continue to watch this as we hit, well, we'll see how the stock fares tomorrow as it plumbed new depths today. Selena Wang, Bloomberg Technology reporter, fantastic as always. Now, Federal Communications Commission Chairman Ajit Pai has been renominated by President Donald Trump. A Republican lawyer, Pai, has served on the commission since 2012 and been its chairman since January. His nomination was sent to the Senate, and Pai has called for, quote, light touch regulation and has made quick work of trimming rules since being designated chairman. Already suspending a requirement that internet service providers safeguard customers' data, he also moved to ease broadband construction mandates imposed when the SEC approved Charter's acquisition of Time Warner last year. Now, coming up, we speak to one of the biggest peer-to-peer lenders in the United Kingdom, Funding Circle, how the company is faring after Brexit and what's ahead for its US business. That's next. And a feature we'd like to bring to your attention. It's our interactive TV function. You can find it at TV Go on the Bloomberg. You'll not only be able to watch us live, but also see previous interviews and dive into any of the securities or Bloomberg functions we talk about. And you can become part of the conversation by sending us instant messages during our shows. This is for Bloomberg subscribers only, though, I'm afraid. Check it out at TV Go. This is Bloomberg. This week, we've been focusing on the future of digital lending, with the peer-to-peer lending space picking up steam globally. Yesterday, we hit on some of the Chinese regulatory hurdles. This time, we're honing in on the United Kingdom and the US, with none other than Funding Circle. The London-based peer-to-peer lending platform operates in 4 countries, including the UK, US, Germany and the Netherlands. Joining us now, Funding Circle co-founder and US Managing Director Sam Hodges. Sam, it's a company I know well. It was one of the startups that I loved to crow about when I was based over in London. And first of all, tell me how you are leading the US area, how that compares growing the business here than it does, say, in the United Kingdom, Germany, Netherlands and Europe.
Sure thing, Caroline. And first off, thanks for having me on the show. I would say that there are some big differences between the US and the UK market, but actually the starting point is the end borrower, the customer we're really trying to serve is actually quite similar. It's an established small business owner who's looking for expansion capital. That being said, the US market's obviously much bigger, it's more fragmented, the regulatory schema is a bit different from the UK, but overall I think a lot of the principles that we've learned well in our UK and also our European business also apply well here in the States.
What about the growth targets for origination of loans here in the United States? Can you paint us a picture of where it goes?
Absolutely. So we've grown the business precipitously over the last couple of years, and this year anticipate being able to grow our origination volume somewhere between 70 and 85%. That on back of strong performance in 2016. We continue to see just a huge opportunity to serve small business customers all over the States, and we're just very focused on delivering a high quality experience for all of them.
What about the credit problems in the loan book that struck Funding Circle in the US in 2016? You had to stop making new loans. How's the credit scoring changed for Funding Circle?
So we actually grew our business through 2016. Certainly there are pockets of 2015 loans that underperformed our expectations a bit, but actually going into 2016 and certainly now in 2017, we feel really positively about the overall credit performance. Our 2016 book is holding up well from a delinquency perspective, and I think our institutional as well as our individual investors are quite happy with the yields they're getting on the marketplace.
You talk about institutional investors there. Are we seeing a heavier weighting or a similar weighting of institutional investors wanting to be able to buy up the loans here in the US vis-a-vis the United Kingdom?
So we form capital in 3 different ways globally. Here in the States, we have a number of large institutional players. Most recently, actually last week, we announced another $100 million commitment from Community Investment Management, which is an institution focused on social impact and particularly around small business, so we're really excited about that. Beyond that, we also have a fractional marketplace where we have a number of accredited investors, and then we also have a set of our own funds. And over time, what I'd anticipate is you actually see a reasonably even balance across those 3 legs of the liquidity stool, if you will.
Would you ever get a banking license? Would you ever want to make loans on your own balance sheet?
Well, so we are licensed in the U.S., and the way we've approached our regulatory framework is on a state-by-state basis. So we hold a California lending license, we hold licenses in 13 other states, and in other states, as a commercial lender, you don't necessarily need to be licensed, or you can passport your licensing from other areas. So we don't necessarily see a need to get a banking license in the United States. We have a framework that works very well as it is.
Talk to me about the regulatory environment and how it's changing. We were talking about Chinese regulatory changes just yesterday. How is it changing the United States? Is the new administration going to make things easier or harder, do you think?
Well, I think with respect to the new administration, it's probably too early to tell, to be quite frank. On the one hand, there's certainly lots of talk of deregulation across financial services writ large, but the devil is really going to be in the details. For now, the world we live in is one where regulation of commercial lending and marketplace lending is really split between certain parts of the federal government and then all the states. And so what that means is certainly there's a reasonably high degree of complexity that you need to navigate. And we've spent the last couple of years just making sure, again, we have a framework and approach that works well within those constraints.
What about global expansion? As we mentioned, you're in 4 countries already. Are there any obvious areas you go into that the regulatory environment fits the way in which you've been growing Funding Circle thus far?
We think there's a huge global opportunity ahead of Funding Circle. That being said, for the time being, we're very focused on making our core markets work. In the US, we now have been lending for going on 4 years. In the UK, we have a very dominant franchise. And now in Europe, in the 2 countries where we play, Germany and the Netherlands, our business is going incredibly well. So I think for the time being, it's really about making those work. But over time, this opportunity around small business credit formation truly is a global one. And I think we're very well poised to help a lot of small businesses all across the world get access to credit.
What made many perhaps raised eyebrows was that you were growing at such pace in the UK despite the Brexit uncertainty. Do you think more small businesses are looking to peer-to-peer lending within times of political and economic uncertainty?
I think there are 2 factors that go into the very strong demand we continue to see in the UK. The first of which is just growing awareness and enthusiasm around going and getting credit online. Right? I mean, you have to remember that 7 years ago, that wasn't really how small business owners got access to credit. But now, you've seen lots of great examples of that working, great small businesses going from soup to nuts on, credit they've been able to receive. And the more people are aware of that, the more people, choose to go to platforms like Funding Circle as their first choice for finance. The other piece of it is, certainly there was some uncertainty when the Brexit vote happened, but the path of a Brexit is still unclear. And so I think you're continuing to see businesses say, hey, I've got an opportunity, I'm going to invest behind it, and therefore I need credit. And I think that's certainly good for us and other lenders. Funding
Circle's US Managing Director, Sam Hodges, and of course co-founder, thanks so much for joining us today, live from New York.
Thank you for having me.
Now, staying with fintech, Yigendai is the only Chinese peer-to-peer lender listed in the United States, and it's looking to navigate China's tightening regulations. This after defaults and fraud ran rampant among China's online lenders. Yigendai's CEO spoke with Bloomberg about changes she's expecting to see this year.
Actually, this is the year for regulation. Yeah, I really think the regulators have made a lot of effort and really addressed the most key issues in the industry so far. So for the past few years, the industry has evolved from emerging to fast growing. Now I think it's going to enter an optimizing stage with the new regulation in place.
Now, talking of banking, tomorrow on Bloomberg Television, Societe Generale CEO Frédéric Oudéa joins Daybreak Americas in New York. Do not miss that conversation. That's 8:45 a.m. Wall Street time, 5:45 a.m. in San Francisco. And still ahead, the company that looked to be the Netflix of fitness classes. We focus on the technology of Peloton. Next, this is Bloomberg. Uber CEO Travis Kalanick is seeking leadership help after a series of PR crises. Most recently, a verbal altercation with a driver that was caught on video. Writing on Uber's blog, Kalanick said his team is actively looking for a chief operating officer who will be, quote, a peer who can partner with me to write the next chapter in our journey. Last month, a former Uber employee wrote about sexual harassment at the company. Uber is also facing a lawsuit from Alphabet's self-driving car unit Waymo for allegedly stealing trade secrets. Uber-like disruption, though, has hit nearly every industry, from transportation to food delivery to fitness. Peloton is one company taking advantage of the demand for on-demand everything, with proprietary bicycles and tablets that let users tap into classes from home. But convenience comes at a cost. Bloomberg's Carol Massa has this story.
This may look like your average cycling class, but it's not. And what you can't see in the studio are the hundreds of riders who are joining in from home.
Last one, I need you to be magical. Saddle down.
Peloton is one of many companies disrupting the fitness industry. From Daily Burn to CrossFit to ClassPass, fitness is becoming more about on-demand and all-access. There's an increasing number of workout companies using technology to offer members unlimited streaming workouts that lets users take all kinds of classes from different locations or in the convenience and privacy of their homes. Peloton Peloton co-founder and CEO John Foley likens it to people wanting things on their terms, their time, and with more convenience.
Going back to when you and I grew up and there were 13 channels, and at 8 o'clock you had to be there for Magnum PI. Now with Netflix and with all these other video streaming apps, you can watch content and consume content where you are, when you want. So I think fitness is the next frontier of that, and I think Peloton is going to help pioneer it.
Today, some $26 billion is spent annually in the U.S. on fitness. Digital workouts are slowly taking a chunk out of that number. On-demand fitness services jumped to nearly 8% of total spending on workouts last year, up from nearly 5% in 2014. At Peloton alone, sales more than doubled from 2015 to 2016. The company made $170 million in revenues last year, nearly 3 times as much as the year before. Foley, who founded Peloton in 2012, after everyday life got in the way of he and his wife's workouts, hopes 2017 will be the company's first profitable year.
How do you see yourself? Is it an application? Is it fitness equipment? Is it technology?
At our core, we are an innovation company and a technology company, full stop.
Where's the health or the fitness?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're in the fitness category, and we're the first, I believe, hardcore technology shop to enter the fitness category. We certainly aren't a stationary bike company by any stretch.
Yet Peloton does sell its own stationary bike that lets users tap into live studio classes or a library of 3,000 cycling and other workout offerings at any time of the day in the privacy of their own homes.
How many bike owners do you have?
So we're approaching 100,000 bikes in the market.
Okay.
But
is that globally?
That's effectively globally. We sell domestically, but people have taken them to 26 countries. So we have bikes all over the world, but we right now are focused on selling the bikes in the States.
What's the most usage? Because there's rides where you can be over in Europe riding, or you can be part of a live class, or you can download, there's a whole menu of different types of classes that you can download. I'm just curious, what gets the most use?
Yeah, so interestingly, only 20% of the rides taken are live. I think the live experience is so much more fun because the energy of like live music, you're there, and if you know Carol, they'll actually give you a shout out. They'll look in the break the fourth wall, look in the camera and say, Carol in Jersey City, it's your 100th ride, you're gonna pull us up the next hill. And it's very immersive. You're part of the theatrics and the entertainment for a live class. On demand is 80% of the rides. And what it kind of tells you is that people really care about having their instructor and their time and controlling that environment versus being driven by our schedule of the live rides.
Have your own stationary bike and still want access to Peloton classes at home? There's a Peloton app for that.
You mentioned technology innovation company. Who do you see as your competition? Is it SoulCycle? Is it Flywheel? Is it ClassPass? Is it?
No, we're rooting for the category. We love SoulCycle. We love Barry's Bootcamp. We love Flywheel. We love yoga. We're trying to be good in the fitness category. So to your question, who do we see as our competitors? What keeps me up at night is if Apple or Google or Amazon were to enter our category. Those are the only 3 companies that I believe have the tech resources and the tech chops to give us a run for our money.
IPO this year?
No.
Because?
We are looking to do a fundraise in the next couple months that would allow us to be as aggressive as we want and take our time considering the public markets.
Next year, maybe?
Maybe.
Maybe. Because I've read something about a $10 billion valuation in 5 years. Is that real?
I would be disappointed if it weren't real. I think that certainly starts to be in the order of magnitude of what we're seeing as the opportunity here. I think that's on the low side of where we see this business going in the next 5 or 10 years.
This April, the monthly subscription service app ClassPass, which grants users access to thousands of different workout classes around the world, plans on rolling out its own video on demand feature, joining companies like Daily Burn and Beachbody On Demand, which have been offering streaming since 2015. And while currently only 15% of fitness consumers are working out on demand, Dana Mackey at market research company Mintel doesn't expect it to stay that way.
In 5 or 10 years, we'll definitely see digital fitness trend continues to grow. I think the new entrants to the market will be more in tune with new technologies, including augmented and virtual reality.
I think Americans are living busier and busier lives, so they want things to work into their schedules and work into their locations versus having to go somewhere at somebody else's schedule. I think that's a dated concept.
That was Bloomberg's Carol Massa and Peloton CEO John Foley. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Tune in for Spate Google X founder tomorrow. This is Bloomberg.